Well, good day. Today is the 4th of July, Independence Day. Happy Independence Day to you. Hope you have a wonderful day. And today I'm going to speak about something you probably don't know about, but should. On the 8th day of March 1971, a group of anti-war activists broke into the FBI resident agency in Media, Pennsylvania. Now, why did they pick that day? Well, that was the day or the night that Muhammad Ali, who was a boxer, was going to fight Joe Frazier. They figured everyone would be glued to their television, and they were, including the rent-a-cops who worked in the federal building. So this group, an anti-war group, broke into the RA, which is a two-man office, and this is being 1971. They had paper files. They made off with the FBI's files, and they found a lot of things that was surprising, way beyond what they even suspected. A lot of things that we don't think that the FBI should have been doing, but was doing, and that's what this video is going to be about. So I'm going to put on a short presentation, and then I'm going to talk about it afterward. Well, as I said in the intro, what they found was astounding. It was evidence of a vast domestic intelligence collection operation. Now, I'll preface this by saying, intel collection by the federal government, it's necessary. And when it's considered against foreign intelligence, it's targeting, it's done by the CIA or the NSA, and it's done to determine threats or potential threats or what a country or movement in a foreign country might do. And again, focus is not necessarily on what they're doing, but also what courses of action they might take if we do, if we do X, they might do Y. So you need a lot of that. It's a necessary evil. Now, domestic intelligence collection, law enforcement, by contrast, is or should be directed against a criminal or criminal organization based on what that group has done or is doing. So there has to be a criminal predicate for surveillance other than just we want to get information on somebody. We have to know or be reasonably certain that they're breaking the law. Now, where this came to a head was at the end of the Second World War. Again, for those of you who don't know, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were the two superpowers, and there was a lot of concern about communist subversion, beginning in the late 40s through the 50s and into the 60s. And the FBI was tasked with gathering intelligence. And some of this was to target people who might be spying on the U.S., counterintelligence. Some of this was intended to target people who had violent intentions to try to overthrow or disrupt the government. But also some of it went to just obtain information on persons who are engaged in, and I'm going to put this in quote marks, subversion. And by that they mean those who are wittingly or unwittingly being used by Moscow or China, the communist powers. And again, as I said, some of this was perfectly legitimate. They investigated groups such as the Weather Underground, which was a bunch of students who turned radical, and they, made bombs and did all sorts of nasty stuff. And then there were other groups like the KKK, perfectly legitimate to target them because they are involved in federal crimes and state crimes. But the surveillance went way beyond that. They also began to surveil groups that hadn't violated the law or advocated violence, not based on what they were doing or had done, but what they might do, or determine if they had connections to foreign intelligence. Now, again, the premise to investigate or gather intelligence on someone based on what they might do, well, that means any of us really are subject to being surveilled, And these groups included those who disagreed mightily with federal law and policy. It included anti-war protesters, those who opposed segregation, civil rights figures, and other dissidents. And the methods used were not consistent with the Fourth Amendment. They included mail covers, which is opening a mail without a warrant, illegal wiretaps, using informants, and what we call black bag jobs, which was illegal entries into buildings. And, on the 8th of March, 1971, a group of activists broke into the media resident agency, and boy, did they get a lot of information. It's a two-man office, but this being 1971, they had a lot of files, and what they uncovered, they were never able to arrest these people who did it. They weren't able to figure it out. The group that did it sent some of it to George McGovern, who was the Democratic candidate for president. He did nothing with it. He sent it back to the FBI because it was all stamped top secret. But they also sent it to the Washington Post, which published it. And what it uncovered was that the FBI was surveilling anti-war groups, surveilling civil rights figures, not because they had done anything illegal, just to gather intelligence so that could be provided to presidents or other politicians. And the biggest group, or the biggest operation that it uncovered, was an operation called Cointelpro, which again was intended to not only gather information on, but disrupt perfectly legitimate activities that are protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. But again, under the theory that we're looking to see if they're being financed by Moscow or that they might do something, well, we're going to investigate them and gather information. And of course, when you do that, you gather up a whole lot of information that is not relevant. And some of that information included just personal information, because you follow someone around, there's an amazing amount of information you can gather on them. And as an example, this is a very sad example, they surveilled Dr. Martin Luther King, and surprisingly, they found that he was engaged in an extramarital affair. Now, what do you do with that information? Well, here's what they did with it. The FBI, and they didn't send this out on letterhead, but they sent him an anonymous letter posing to be opponents of civil rights and suggesting that he take his own life or that he would be exposed. Now, thank God he did not do that. But, it begs the question, why was our government doing it? Was it consistent with the Fourth Amendment? No. Was it moral? No. Was it legal? No. Should they ever do it again? No. And reforms were enacted. After the death of J. Edgar Hoover and all this came out in the wash, Congress enacted a lot of laws and made sure that the FBI was supposed to stick to criminal offenses and not investigate people based on their politics. So there you have it. I mean, why should we stop the federal government from collecting intelligence based on what we might do? Because if we don't, or if we didn't do that, then all of us would be subject to surveillance. And why is that bad? Because it can be used by political actors to deny us our rights, and our right to speak, and our right to practice religion and assemble, and our right to privacy are the most precious rights that we have. And that's really what has been bequeathed to us by the Founding Fathers. So we would never want to see an Operation Cointelpro or anything like it happen in the future. And but again, there's always the saying, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And I fear that may be the case. So hopefully this was a little bit informative to you and maybe even a little entertaining. And I hope you have a wonderful 4th, and thank you for watching.